In the dusty saloons and lawless streets of the Old West, few names commanded as much respect and fear as Wild Bill Hickok. Known for his lightning-fast draw and unerring aim, Hickok's reputation as a gunfighter was legendary. But even legends meet their end, and for Wild Bill, that moment came in a dramatic showdown. Join us as we unravel the story of his final gunfight, a confrontation that marked the end of an era and immortalized Hickok in the Wild West. During an 1871 shootout in Abilene, Wild Bill Hickok, known for his sharpshooting skills, inadvertently ended up killing a friend. This incident deeply affected the legendary gunfighter's state of mind. On the evening of October 5th, 1871, a group of around 50 inebriated Texas cowboys, who had been unable to attend the Dickinson County Fair due to bad weather, followed Phil Coe, a gambler and saloon owner, as he visited various saloons in Abilene, Kansas. By this time of year, most cattlemen had returned home, leaving many of those still around to enjoy drinks with Coe as he made his rounds on Texas Street. Though drunkenness wasn't illegal, the issue arose because Coe and his companions were carrying weapons, despite Marshal Wild Bill Hickok's recent warnings against firearms within the city limits. By 9 p.m., the crowd had gathered at the Alamo Saloon. A gunshot rang out, prompting Hickok to swiftly respond and investigate. Coe, holding a revolver, claimed he had fired at a stray dog. He was clearly irritable and had no interest in listening to Hickok. Before the marshal could say anything further, Coe drew a second revolver and fired twice in Hickok's direction. One bullet struck the sidewalk, while the other grazed the hem of Hickok's coat. According to a local newspaper, Hickok reacted swiftly by drawing his revolvers and firing multiple shots. Two of these bullets hit Phil Coe in the stomach, leading to Coe's painful death 3 days later. A third bullet struck another armed individual who had moved between Hickok and Coe. Initially, Hickok, illuminated by kerosene lamps and surrounded by an aggressive crowd, couldn't see who was hit. To his horror, he realized that he had accidentally shot his friend, Mike Williams. Williams had been a jailer on the Abilene police force that summer and was planning to leave town that evening to return to his ailing wife in Kansas City. Overcome with grief, Hickok, reportedly in tears, carried Williams into the Alamo Saloon and laid him on a billiard table. This incident marked the end of Hickok's career as a lawman. On December 13th, the city council decided to dismiss Hickok and his deputies. With the cattle season concluded and discussions underway to potentially ban cattle trading altogether, the city no longer required Hickok's services. Hickok never returned to law enforcement. The reasons behind his departure remain speculative. Whether it was due to the psychological trauma of accidentally killing his friend, poor eyesight, or a desire to settle down and get married. What is clear is that the events at the Alamo Saloon deeply affected Hickok. Known for his fierce reputation during the Civil War as a scout against rebel bushwhackers, and later as a skilled marksman and lawman, Hickok's persona was significantly altered by this tragic event. In the early years of his career, Hickok did little to dispel the myths surrounding him. He enjoyed spinning tall tales and was known for his elaborate storytelling. This included an interview he gave in 1865 in Springfield, Missouri, where he claimed to have killed hundreds of men. This sensational account was published in the February 1867 issue of Harper's New Monthly Magazine and was followed by another story in the Weekly Missouri Democrat with Henry M. Stanley. Hickok's boasting led many respectable citizens to view him with skepticism and made him realize that exaggerating to the press was unwise. By 1868, he began avoiding journalists, though his legend continued to grow. Despite the embellishments, Hickok did have a record of fatal encounters. Apart from the rebels he was said to have killed during the Civil War, he is confirmed to have fatally shot 6 men, 2 in self-defense, and the others in his capacity as a lawman. When asked by Nichols about the emotional impact of these actions, Hickok replied that he seldom thought about it, stating, "The most of the men I have killed it was one or t'other of us, and at sich times you don't stop to think, and what's the use after it's all over?" He told Stanley that he only killed when absolutely necessary and never sought to shoot anyone without cause. Hickok's skill with his revolvers was widely acknowledged. According to a posthumous tribute from a Chicago Tribune reporter, the secret of Bill's success was his ability to draw and discharge his pistols with a rapidity that was truly wonderful. And a peculiarity of his was that the two were presented and discharged simultaneously, being out and off before the average man had time to think about it. He never seemed to take any aim, yet he never missed. Buffalo Bill Cody once remarked that while some gunmen were more accurate than Hickok, few matched his skill with a revolver. Wild Bill had a unique method of cocking, aiming, and firing as he drew his weapon, unlike most who would draw, cock, aim, and then shoot, a process that took more time. Beyond his shooting prowess, Hickok's strong character and confident demeanor allowed him to command respect. When people saw him, they believed the legend. In My Life on the Plains, George Armstrong Custer wrote about Hickok's immense influence among frontiersmen, noting that his word was law. Custer recalled many instances where Hickok quelled disputes simply by declaring, "This has gone far enough," and warning that any further disagreement would have to be settled with him. Hickok was not considered aggressive by his peers, but he was always ready to act decisively and took full responsibility for his actions. Unlike others who might rely on friends for backup during confrontations, Hickok stood alone. Despite ceasing to boast to reporters, there were plenty of old-timers who claimed to have witnessed his gunfights. One notable incident that cemented his reputation was the showdown in Springfield, Missouri on July 21, 1865. A card game dispute with Davis K. Tutt the night before led to a confrontation that epitomized the classic Hollywood face-to-face showdown. Although some so-called eyewitnesses later embellished their accounts, coroner's records confirmed that Hickok did indeed shoot Tutt, hitting him in the heart from a distance of 75 yards. In Hays City, Kansas, 4 years later, acting Sheriff Hickok had to confront Bill Mulvey in August, and then saloon rowdy Samuel Strawhun the following month. Although Hickok seemed to act in self-defense, his actions received mixed reactions. On November 11, 1869, the Gazette of Delaware, Ohio, noted that Hickok was either heartily hated or more feared than loved. He lost the election for sheriff of Ellis County in November, partly because he was a Republican in a predominantly Democratic area. In July 1870, Hickok returned to Hays City, possibly for personal reasons or as a deputy U.S. Marshal, and shot 2 drunken 7th U.S. Cavalry troopers. The exact number of cavalry men present is unclear, but Hickok was fortunate to escape unharmed. His time in Hays City was eventful, but his reputation truly flourished the following year in Abilene. Appointed town marshal on April 15, 1871, Hickok and his deputies were responsible for maintaining order among the 5,000 Texas cowboys who passed through Abilene between May and October. Despite the challenges posed by gamblers, prostitutes, and others aiming to exploit the cowboys, the lawmen generally succeeded. When the city council instructed Marshal Hickok to relocate the undesirables south of the railroad tracks, the resulting area of brothels and gambling dens was dubbed McCoy's Addition, a jab at cattle baron and mayor Joseph G. McCoy. Hickok's confrontation with the inebriated Phil Coe on October 5th was a tragic incident that seemed inevitable given the risks of being a lawman in a cowtown. Hickok understood these dangers well. He faced Coe's challenge but was devastated when his friend Mike Williams inadvertently stepped into the line of fire. Afterward, Hickok patrolled the streets, disarming potential troublemakers, and within an hour, Abilene was eerily quiet. He insisted on covering the cost of Mike Williams' funeral, and later visited Williams' widow to express his sorrow and explain the unfortunate events of that night. Although Hickok was clearly disturbed by the incident, most residents of Abilene did not blame him, and a coroner's inquest cleared him of any wrongdoing. Unfortunately, the records of that inquest, along with similar documents, were lost in courthouse fires in both Abilene and Hays City. Some newspapers made errors in reporting the events, but overall the accounts were favorable, noting that Hickok had bravely fulfilled his duties. The Abilene Chronicle stated that Phil Coe, viewed by some as a thug and by others as having good impulses, got what he deserved. However, some Texans disagreed and were very upset. Coe's family reportedly placed a $10,000 bounty on Hickok's head. In November, 5 Texans attempted to ambush Hickok on a train to Topeka, but he outsmarted them and continued to be seen as a formidable opponent to wrongdoers. While the Coe incident bolstered Hickok's reputation as a gunfighter, he no longer sought such recognition. He declined an offer to become the city marshal of Newton, Kansas, for $200 a month, even though he earned only $150 a month in Abilene. The tragic death of Mike Williams and the potential risk to other bystanders may have influenced his decision. Despite knowing that the shooting of Williams was accidental, Hickok was not in the right mental state to accept another law enforcement position. Some speculated that the tragedy had shaken his confidence, but his contemporaries did not believe this. In March 1873, a rumor spread that Texans had killed Hickok at Fort Dodge, prompting him to write to newspapers to confirm he was alive. He did not seem timid in his declaration, stating, "I never have insulted man or woman in my life, but if you knew what a wholesome regard I have for damn liars and rascals, they would be liable to keep out of my way." While Hickok's nerve might have remained steady, his eyesight reportedly deteriorated over time. In 1874, it was suggested that he suffered from an eye disorder caused by the colored fire used during his tour with Buffalo Bill's combination theater troupe the previous year. Later accounts mentioned that he received successful treatment with mineral drugs. However, J.W. Buell, in his 1882 book, Heroes of the Plains, hinted that after a trip to the Black Hills in late 1875, Hickok sought treatment for eye conditions like ophthalmia and conjunctivitis from Kansas City physician Dr. Joshua Thorne. Mari Sandoz, in her book The Buffalo Hunters, claimed that in the 1930s she found a report by an Army surgeon at Camp Carlin, Wyoming Territory, indicating that Hickok had glaucoma and would soon go blind. This report, if it ever existed, has never been found. Camp Carlin was only a remount depot, with the nearest surgeon located at Fort D.A. Russell in Cheyenne, and its records have revealed nothing about Hickok. Nonetheless, some modern medical experts have speculated that Hickok might have suffered from trachoma, an eye infection that can lead to blindness if untreated. Regardless of his vision issues, after the shootout at the Alamo Saloon, Hickok became more cautious about his reputation as a gunfighter. In 1875, while in Cheyenne, he spoke to Annie Talent, one of the first white women to enter the Black Hills, about his burdensome reputation. He said, "I am called a red-handed murderer, which I deny. That I have killed men I admit, but never unless in absolute self-defense or in the performance of an official duty. I never in all my life took any mean advantage of an enemy. Yet understand, I never allowed a man to get the drop on me, but perhaps I may yet die with my boots on." By the mid-1870s, the western frontier, as Hickok knew it was changing, and he decided it was time to start a new chapter in his life. Throughout his youth, he had romantic connections with several women. His first love was Mary Jane, the part Indian daughter of John Owen, who took him in as a boarder when he arrived in Monticello, Kansas Territory, in 1857. During the Civil War and on the plains in the late 1860s, Wild Bill had several romantic affairs, including one in Ellsworth, Kansas, with Indian Annie, who bore him a son that later died. It wasn't until March 5, 1876, that Hickok married. His bride was Agnes Lake Thatcher, a circus performer whose previous husband, Bill Lake, had been murdered years before. Hickok first met Agnes when her circus came to Abilene in 1871, and they stayed in touch for several years before the wedding. Marrying Agnes signaled a new beginning, and Hickok needed money to support his new wife. He reportedly made a trip to the Black Hills in 1875, and in the spring of 1876, he attempted to organize an expedition of would-be gold miners to the hills from St. Louis. Upon discovering that others had already organized a similar venture, Hickok delayed his plans and went to Cheyenne instead. By the end of June, he joined his old friend Colorado Charlie Utter and headed to the newly founded mining camp at Deadwood Gulch. Deadwood seemed like an ideal place to make money at the diggings, as Hickok hinted to his wife in a letter dated July 17th from Deadwood. He mentioned it might be the first step toward moving elsewhere. Hickok told Agnes he wanted to make a home for them, and she expressed eagerness to join him in her correspondence with his family in Troy Grove. However, Hickok spent more time gambling than mining, and reports following his death in August suggested he was not a happy man. Cody, who had met Hickok en route to Deadwood in July, claimed in a September interview that Wild Bill had said he did not expect to return from the Black Hills. Even if Hickok's shooting skills, our vision, and mental state had been in top form, they would not have helped him when a drifter named Jack McCall walked into Deadwood Saloon number 10 on August 2nd, 1876, and shot him in the back of the head. Wild Bill was denied the chance to prove whether he was still the best pistolier in the Old West and died at age 39. Wild Bill's niece, Ethel Hickok, born in June 1886, nearly 10 years after his death, grew up hearing family stories that highlighted his gentle side. In several interviews with this author over the years, Ethel mentioned that her father, Horace Hickok, told her that Wild Bill disliked his reputation as a man-killer. Ethel also recalled that her mother, Martha Edwards Hickok, shared how Wild Bill's own mother, Polly, became very upset when she heard stories about his gunfights and the men he was said to have killed. According to Ethel, Wild Bill's brothers, Horace and Lorenzo, and his sisters, Celinda and Lydia, all tried to dispel the false stories. However, even those closest to him doubted he could have ever settled down. Ethel said that Lorenzo Hickok, who knew his brother very well, once remarked that if Bill had not died in 1876, his restless spirit and adventurous nature would have kept him roaming the Wild West. But had he continued his wandering, it was likely only a matter of time before another Western troublemaker, or outlaw, would have taken a cheap shot at the former lawman and legendary pistolier. As the dust settled in the saloon and the echoes of gunfire faded, the legend of Wild Bill Hickok only grew. His last gunfight was more than a deadly confrontation. It was a defining moment that cemented his place in the lore of the Old West. Hickok's legacy continues to captivate, reminding us of the wild, unpredictable world he navigated with unmatched skill and unyielding resolve. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more tales from the Old West. Stay tuned for more stories that bring history to life.